Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another brand new update. And also, if you are watching this on release day, a brand new month of March 2022. Although this update will be pretty relevant over the next couple of days, potentially even weeks, because in today's update, the really brand new information that we have is to kick off the brand new month is that we now officially also have information about a brand new proposal that recently just came out, and it actually is something that now applies across the country to all 50 states when it just comes to the world of just doing fourth stimulus programs. Now, I do maybe want to start off this by maybe just clarifying some information that most people already know, but there are still people that commented in the comments section. So I think it's very, very important to clarify, which is the fact that when it comes to the world of just fourth stimulus checks collectively as a whole, I think it's really important to know is that right now, when it comes to doing traditional fourth stimulus checks, so if we're talking about like checks that are sent out to a very wide, massive, large audience group of people, such as like what happened with the first, the second, and the third stimulus check, right now the talks when it comes to those kinds of stimulus checks is actually relatively quiet. However, there are definitely a lot of talks that are happening, as most of you guys know, on a very, very focused level, but specifically such as like on a state level, like a lot of the past videos that we've already made, which once again I'll put at the end screen because they're actually being approved, and some of them are actually already approved, but they just have to kind of be dug through pretty deep. But even more specifically, and I think this is the part that's important to clarify, is that it's not also just with very, very specific states, but it's actually with very, very specific demographics of people. So for example, it's something that can maybe potentially apply to every state. So it is something very federal, it's all 50 states, but maybe it'll be like a stimulus check to just people that are on Social Security or people that were previously on unemployment. And I feel it because that actually was me right there. So, we're hopefully in the same club with a lot of people. Or even to people, for example, that maybe missed their first or second stimulus check, people that just immigrated here, people that just had children. But the idea is just very focused people. But today's update is going to be focused all about this brand new proposal that is meant to potentially do about $200 to $350 worth of monthly stimulus checks. So we're going to talk all about it. But as always, real fast, before we begin, consider smashing the like button because we are at least talking about something pretty positive. At least I like to think so, hopefully for most people. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about honestly anything. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the new proposal that recently just came out was essentially introduced by probably one of the most famous politicians, Mitt Romney, and there is a very huge significance to why this is actually very important, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But essentially, this is the actual text document that he actually released when it comes to this specific proposal. It is being called the Family Security Act. And the way that this specific program works is that it is going to send essentially a $350 monthly stimulus check for any family that has a child 5 or under. So essentially per child, so if you have 2 kids or you recently gave birth to 2 people, that's going to be a $700 monthly stimulus check. So it's basically going to be a $350 monthly check for each child 5 and under, or a $250 monthly check for kids between 6 and 17 years old. So essentially, if you have someone that's in your household that's under 18 years old, then they can potentially get this. And the average is going to be about 300 because, if you can get between 250 and then 350, and the average between 250 and 350 is pretty much $300 monthly, and that's pretty much where it comes from. Now, there are actually a lot of interestingly special perks that are going on about this specific program. So for example, one of the actual brand new perks about this program, interestingly, is that they're now doing a special perk inside of this program where they're going to essentially be trying to potentially allow people to get onto this program, even for people that have not actually physically given birth yet. So how does this work is that if you are someone that is currently pregnant, or maybe you know someone that, is pregnant in your household, because, some people like I cannot get pregnant. What it is really is that essentially it's something that you can actually apply for about 4 months before the expected due date of your child, meaning that if you expect to have a child soon, they can actually retroactive the payments for your specific child while the child is still inside of the stomach, basically. So essentially, before the child actually pops out, they can actually now already apply for this ahead of time with a potential maximum amount to receive of about $1,250 given at birth. So what this essentially means is that if you know you're about to have a child soon, or maybe you know someone in your family, or just someone in general, maybe send this video to them that is potentially going to have a child, they can actually apply for this program up to 4 months before they actually give birth, so that when the baby actually does pop out, they would immediately now be able to have retroactive payments from when the baby was in the womb of about $1,250. So essentially that's about almost a $1,200 stimulus check, which is actually the amount of the first stimulus check. And all of this actually that I just mentioned is on top of the monthly payments that would actually now continue on once the baby actually does pop out. So it's essentially almost $1,200 and then now an additional $350 every single month after month. So essentially about a little bit over $3,000 approximately every single year now for pretty much the next 5 years, depending on how long the program is going to last for, because it's still a proposal. They want to try to make it as long as possible, but right now at this time, what it really is that it's pretty much just like an extension of the child tax credit with many different perks tweaked around. So it's still a little bit, it's kind of like a new updated version of the child tax credit, but for many people, acting as pretty much a fourth stimulus, because at the end of the day, it is money that is going inside of some of our pockets, which is probably the most important thing. And the fact that it applies to all 50 states, which I think is the really, really cool thing. Now, interestingly enough, there is actually now an even additional perk, and I think this is the one that not a lot of people are talking about. Well, what they really also want to do inside of this bill is that they're going to actually also interestingly reform the policy or the tax structure for families. Long story short about what this is that they want to increase the refund. So if you happen to have a family of some kind, every single year, for a lot of people, you will probably, well, most people that are employed typically receive the tax refund. We did talk about like a special $1,500 stimulus check, also called the Earned Income Tax Credit. And this is something that actually applies to even single individuals. But of course, we already talked about that, so I'll put a video at the very end screen. I believe it's literally just called $1,500 checks, because that's the amount. And that actually applies for single individuals as well, and families, but both single and families. But specifically for families, one of the things that they're hoping to do is that they're going to try to change up the tax structure. So when families typically receive a typical refund every single year from, as part of the tax refund, what this is going to do is to essentially give certain tax cuts to families. So now when they receive their refund, they can actually get even more money on top of everything that just happened. And many people actually believe that for the typical average family, this can actually amount to a potential tax refund of an additional something in, let's just say, the lower 4 digits. So basically about $1,000 to $2,000 to even $3,000. So it's very, very significant actually, because what this really means is that if you are someone that's about to have a child soon, you will essentially potentially be able to get almost a $1,200 stimulus check when you give birth, a $350 monthly stimulus check every single month now that you do have the baby, and then during tax season time now an additional $1,000 to $2,000 to maybe even more thousand. It's a little bit of an indefinite amount because it actually varies very specifically across different circumstances. But the idea is that for some families, they can now potentially get something in the couple $1,000s range by the end of this year, if this ends up going through, by the end of this year, and continuing payments until the child is pretty much into adult life. Or depending on however long this bill essentially goes on for, but if it does end up becoming a long-term thing, potentially into adult life. Now, Obviously, I do know is that this is something that really applies to families, so if that applies to you, huge congrats. I do wish that maybe there was something more for single individuals, especially because I'm also a single individual, so I feel it right there for a lot of you guys out there. There is the earned income tax credit. There are still state programs that do apply to single individuals, but of course, most of today's program is going to be a families thing, but hopefully we can find some remedy to know at least there's other people that are also getting some relief that hopefully we also can relate to and relatively care about. Now, I really want to end this by maybe talking about the significance about why this is actually really important as mentioned, is that because one of the biggest, most significant things about this specific program is that what's special is that because it was actually proposed by Mitt Romney, what is actually really particular about that has to be the fact that Mitt Romney is a Republican. And this is not to get political in any way. I mean, this is an objective fact. He is a Republican. But what it is that because one of the reasons so many of the past stimulus programs really struggled to approve was really because of a lot of the conflict that was happening inside of the Democratic Party. Most people know, such as about like Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. Feel free to comment anything about that if you guys have any thoughts. But because this new proposal is now written by a Republican, why this is actually really great and promising news is that it means that if they're able to maybe get some of the Republicans, and now that they do see some of the Republicans come to their side, maybe it is very probable to see that even if they are not able to get Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema's support, if they can now start to get support from the Republican side, they may now actually be able to very much gain enough votes to cover for the votes that they don't have there to now actually maybe potentially get it fully approved and go through. But of course, that's pretty much most of what I just really wanted to share in today's update, to really just highlight what this bill is and hopefully the significance of it. As always, if you guys hopefully found that insightful or maybe learned something, consider smashing the like button. As always, if you guys haven't done so, of course, you guys can decide, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts. It's always great to say hi to new and familiar faces. And